All right, we're good to go.
All right, so I will call the June 8th Village Board meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We should update the agenda, but due to the state's guidelines on meeting in person, we're going to be holding these remotely for at least the foreseeable future, and we will get into, under public participation, any emails or calls that we got. So with that, I will ask Penny to call the roll.
Trustee Geyer.
Here.
Trustee Sperling.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Betzinger.
Here.
Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
And Trustee Marisek.
All right, we're all here. Under public participation, Jeff, is there any member of the public on the call or in person, or did anybody email or call you?
No, we have received no public comment, have nobody here to give public comment.
Okay, and there's nobody extra in the room here that wishes to make public comment? I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay. All right, with that, we'll move on to item B under public participation. That's the MEDC update. Shar?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I don't know why my picture's not up there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I am here today to give you, the village board, an update for the last 6 months. I reported to the board back in November. So what we're going to cover is the year end and then going into the current time. So thank you for this opportunity. Now, you know, the year end from November to December, even into January, we were hoping that the Caterpillar project would close, and there was a lot of activity. We had a lot of meetings, even during the holidays. In fact, everybody from staff and Fox Metro and the Wright brothers, everybody was awesome. We did not get to close until the middle of March, but the good news was we were able to work a lot with the Wright brothers on also all the prospects that were involved. We had several meetings with the railroad, the county, the village. And so with that, I think it's great news for us because they were probably the best candidate that we had out of the 4 or 5 that we had worked with over the last several years. So that's a plus for all of us, I think. And then, of course, we went from the Caterpillar closing, and within a week after that came the pandemic. So that kind of put a halt to a lot of things, but yet not really on the CAT site because I had numerous calls and active participants looking at the site, and Cushman and Wakefield were the lead brokers on that. So we were still able to have additional meetings, talk about the future of the site. There are several parcels that are currently under consideration. And I guess the best news about all of this is the thing that we really wanted the most was to be able to keep those 500 engineers. And currently the Wright brothers are going to be redesigning a space within one of the buildings to then retrofit for these 500 engineers. And I did try to get out of them, how long is the lease, when will, construction start, all that kind of stuff. They are under, obviously, a confidentiality agreement, but they did assure me that they expect Caterpillar and those jobs to stay in Montgomery for a very long time. They're also willing to put a lot of money into the site. And so, again, I think this is a plus for all the time that we waited and all the activity that took place. It was all very positive and surely worth the time. Now then, as we move on to the pandemic, let's see, are you able, do you move to the next slide. Yes, okay. Go back one slide. I'm sorry, Jeff. So here, I just really kind of summarized the last 6 months, what we were working on, the new prospects, the meetings that we held, again, during the holidays into March. Then when the pandemic started, what was really interesting, I thought, was how everybody pulled together. We started with I know the village did as well. We started with a local group with all the EDC directors and the county and the college. And we used that as, let's say, a bouncing board to talk to one another. We created a site that we could drop documents in. And then we were able to educate the community, the staff, the village, and all of the businesses within the community. And then we also then worked on ways that we could help them. So we started with hospitality grants. We worked on different loan programs. The MEDC was actually getting so good at these applications that I actually worked with the Old Second Bank, and the MEDC was able to also apply for a PPP loan, which gave us $16,000, which really puts us in a good place just in case we have any issues with renewals, or if we want to put in some extra effort on the marketing side. There's a lot of things that I've been learning as we move forward, how to be creative and help our businesses, because not all of them really know how to do that. And so I think that anything that we can do to help them is advantageous for all of us. So I created a Go to Montgomery page. It lists, any specials, any new activities, new hours. Some of the local businesses were very creative. They started with, the pickups and the ordering online. All of that was really crucial to trying to keep them going. Obviously, the grant program was just really awesome. I know that so far you've approved over 34, I believe. And a lot of those individuals and businesses were the ones that were the most vocal and needed the most help. So I want to thank everybody for getting together and working so quickly on that. It really made an impact. Just letting everybody know that Montgomery cares. And I think that, not that I'm biased or anything, but I am obviously, Montgomery did more than any community in the region. They addressed the needs immediately, both with the residents and the business owners. There's no added debt, which is really important. And as the pandemic has opened up a little bit, they've also worked very closely with the restaurants on allowing them, to serve outside. Kudos to the staff on that. I know that I've heard a lot of great compliments and appreciation, which is really nice to hear. Usually I'm always the one who gets sometimes the bad news, and I've heard nothing but great things. So I'm very, very proud of everyone, and I know that the mayor and the village trustees, everybody took a role and everybody worked together to help people. And I think that's just says so much for Montgomery and, us moving forward. I know that a lot of our roles have changed. I know mine has. I spent a lot of time on the finance side of things. And again, I think personally marketing each individual business, finding out where their weaknesses are, how to help them maybe come up with, maybe a new menu, new hours, new opportunities. All those things are really crucial I think many of us spent time driving around and talking to the businesses. I know that a few of them needed some assistance with their drive-through. I think a lot of that stuff needs to be addressed for the future because business is picking up and it's very positive. And hopefully, I'm hoping that I don't see anybody that we're losing at this time. And there's been a lot of activity, especially on the manufacturing side. We've had a lot of interest, not only in the Caterpillar site, but various other buildings are being repurposed. There's a new broker that's handling the Lion Meadow building. There's a lot more aggressive brokers coming from the surrounding area, actually more from the city, and they're a lot more aggressive, and they have a lot more other clients that they could bring into Montgomery, which is huge. I also did spend some time on trying to encourage our businesses and, give them some positive things to look at. I know probably the first 6 or 8 weeks were pretty tough. People were getting very discouraged. But I think when you let them know that the village cares and we all care, it made a difference and gave them hope. And again, I really appreciated all the help that all the organizations did for us and with us. I know that immediately with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, they assisted me in getting the Montgomery businesses who had drive-through open. I'm watching my slide on my computer, and Jeff, I'm sorry. I probably needed to move on to the next slide. So the pandemic, the social distancing, all of that was new to many of us. And, basically, I think the attitude of whatever it takes to help the businesses move forward, I think was very important. I think now we need to move on to the next phase, which would then also, I'm sorry, I talked before I let you know to move on to the slide. I'm sorry. So we did increase awareness. And again, I'm sorry for being redundant. I'm looking at 2 slides and everybody's faces and never did a presentation on this type of videos, scenario. But I think the next slide is really what's important as we move forward towards the future. And again, creating new marketing opportunities for the businesses that maybe, haven't done that before. I think some of our younger business owners are pretty savvy, but the social media aspect of working with, specials and restaurants and different things that are available, people are very spontaneous. And I know just through posting constantly, people going places that they never went before. And again, I think the continued effort of all of us working as a team and getting businesses to work together will bring together a rejuvenation to this area. I think that creating new opportunities also on the networking side, I know that people reached out to me, and many of my board members and MEBC members were very helpful to numerous different organizations, just trying to get the word out there and letting them know that they could help. And then the last slide, I just added just a few photos. The Wright brothers came up with a whole new marketing view, calling the site the grid. I was able to post that right away. The activity increased. I was able to do a lot on the website on a daily basis. I know when I posted Montgomery Place, we had over like 2,900 views, which was just amazing. People are really excited to be able to, rent in Montgomery. The property is going up very quickly and it's very pretty. And then, of course, in the wings, we have a lot of activity, including the dome and the second dome. I know that the first one, we were close to 46 million. I found out, I thought originally at the last board meeting when some numbers were being quoted, I thought it was another 50, but I was wrong on that, Doug. It was about 23 million. I must have heard Teresa wrong when she had asked the question, but still, we're still looking at about $74 million just on one property. There's still activity on a few other parcels. And then I also had several conversations with activity for the rail and BNSF. And there are ways that we can add additional opportunities for the land within the CAT site. And there are ways to also migrate the cost and the improvements on the rail. Obviously, it's been like 70 years since the rail's been in full operation from the time that it started. And in speaking with the railroad, not only today, we had a conference call today and last week, we have about 6 projects that could possibly use rail access, and they're willing to work with the community on even, did you know that you could walk in a rail car? So as you move into a site, you could literally walk in the rail car until we're able to increase the infrastructure on that rail. So I thought that was good to know as we're looking at different parcels and the access to the rail. Those are all very positive things. And that is really all I have at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's anything that somebody wants to talk about, I'll do my best to answer. Any questions?
All right.
I have a question, if I may. Shar, since the apartments are going in Montgomery, have any additional restaurants or anything been interested or looking at locations over there because of the potentially increased population?
I haven't had any calls recently. I did have some interest before the pandemic on the 3034 corridor and where the deli is going. And they're very flexible. They would allow another restaurant in that strip center as long as it was not specific. It wasn't like another deli. So if they had hamburgers or beef sandwiches, maybe even tacos, they would be open to consideration on that. Pizza might be another one. At one time, we had Cane's looking, but they were very interested in being near Chick-fil-A. But I think once they start, the apartments become available, it will obviously open the door for more activity. And the other thing is, since the pandemic, the lines for anyone with a drive-through has, gone out into the parking lot. So I don't know what all those numbers mean, but I mean, I go to Bona Beef and Sonic constantly, and the lines just continue to get bigger and bigger. So that is going to generate new activity because these restaurants know what the numbers are, and then they're going to start looking. And as long as the land is available, and our numbers will help. They're more concerned about the sales and the ability to touch the market. And so as soon as we get more people, I would guess that people will come back, like the Firehouse and the Roadhouse. that previously were interested in that corridor. So I would give it another 6 months, Steve. I know there's still some uncertainty on the political side of things. Most of the brokers that I speak to have been focused on the industrial and the warehouse side. So they're going to stop speculative construction, but they think that they'll be able to utilize the inside of these large buildings and get creative until the market picks up. So there's still a lot of unknown, but I really think that the retail's going to pick up, and definitely on the food side, I think we're just so underserved, and I swear people in this area just do not cook, because I just can't believe the lines constantly, no matter where you go. So I would say yes, but I don't have any specific interested parties. I was told about another party being interested in the Luckies, and we're still trying to find out if that deal is still in the works, because we have another party that's interested. But other than that, I've not heard anything, Steve.
I was going to ask you about Canes. I actually had lunch there today, and I would think that location in Ogden Hill would be better suited for Canes because they're getting the traffic from both 30 and 34. I understand their concern and wanting to be close to Chick-fil-A, but I think that the location that we have is better.
Well, we could try again, but I heard they made an offer, and Oswego already announced it. But that doesn't necessarily mean they wouldn't do a second one, because we've also had that with numerous restaurants in Montgomery and Oswego that their other location does so well, they could still service that 30-34 corridor. So I agree. And they're very simple. They're very easy to work with. It's just a question of they'll probably wait until the one is open in Oswego before they would consider a second location, within a 5-mile distance. They only have 4 items on the menu. Is that true? I heard that.
I don't know. I just eat chicken. That's all I eat.
Oh, okay.
All right. Any other questions for Shar? Hearing none. I literally hear nothing. Yeah. All right, perfect. Thank you, Shar. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll go ahead and move on to the consent items. I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. We have minutes of the village board meeting of May 25th, 2020. The building report for May of 2020. Accounts payable for FY20 through June 4th. And then accounts payable for FY21 through June 4th. And finally, the cancellation of the June 16th committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, call the roll.
Sorry, who was that first, President Brawley?
Doug.
All right, thank you. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that carries unanimous. Thank you. Under items this evening, we have Resolution 2020-012, updating its policy prohibiting sexual harassment. Jeff, who's taking this one?
I'm hoping Laura's going to take this one.
Yes, thank you. This is just a standard update. As I'm sure you know, last year the state passed legislation that required updates to municipal and public body sexual harassment policies to include additional provisions pertaining to elected and appointed officials. So this is just a cleanup of your current policy to add the state mandated language.
I move to approve.
Second. Going to take a leadership role there. Go ahead. Call the roll.
Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
That carries. Thank you. Item B this evening is a professional janitorial services contract extension. Is this Director Wolf?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. So before the board tonight is a contract extension. I did want to go over just really quickly. We originally started this project as a RFP to go out for bid for this project. Unfortunately, the timing of when the COVID-19 pandemic came into play was right in when we were kind of in the heart of this and required our bidders to be part of a mandatory pre-bid meeting where we would have them tour the facilities, enable for them to see the facilities in their entirety, so we can make sure we're getting a good results as far as our bidding process goes. So, unfortunately, with the current situation and our unknown of when we're going to be able to bring and for that matter be comfortable bringing multiple different people into our buildings, we reached out to our current contractor, Citywide Janitorial Services, and negotiated basically for a no-cost increase to continue this service for one additional year. So our plan would then be to go out to bid the following year, given that we're in a different state at that point in time. So that is what's being proposed tonight. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
And if I could note, just because this is a waiver of bid, it is a supermajority vote requirement.
Okay.
I have a question for Director Wolf. When I read through that, I'm really just looking for clarification. There was something about, extra charges. It seemed like it was tied into doing extra steps related to COVID-19. Was that correct?
So that's correct. Those charges are not part of this contract. This contract is for the cleaning of the three facilities, which would be Village Hall, Public Works, and the Police Department facilities. The COVID-19 expenses are something that we are paying on a separate agreement with the same company, Citywide, at this point in time. And we're not obligated to continue those for any lengthy period of time. So we can basically cancel those at any time that we feel necessary.
Okay, thank you.
A question for Director Wolf. Do we really not think if we were to rebid this now, we might end up in a better position than a $43,000 a year cleaning contract extension?
You know, that's something that we thought about. The reality is trying to figure out how to stage, like I said, to bring different people in and then handle being able to combat different questions that may come up during tours and then relay those questions on to the other groups. It just seemed like kind of a lot of nuances to go through to try to accommodate this. Staff, we feel that we're happy with the service that we're being provided by Citywide. They've been doing this contract for the past 3 years. But I mean, certainly that's why we really wanted to go out to RFP. We were hoping for some more advantageous quotes, but like I said, given the pandemic and the reality of contractors needing to see the facilities to give us a good, accurate number as far as those cleaning costs, this is what we felt the best case was at this point in time.
If you did go out to bid, wouldn't there be the potential of the company that's doing it now? It would give them the opportunity to increase their number?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed they have an escalation clause in here tied to state minimum wage increases. Have they indicated they're going to exercise that clause? Because there's going to be an increase in July and January, 8% and 10% respectively.
They indicated that there would more than likely be an increase if that does take effect. And it would match the increase in the minimum wage.
what does that mean exactly? I understand that the minimum wage basically is going to $11 January 1st. So what does that mean for match their increase? Do you have hours that they are billing you for cleaning per building? And so it would take $1 per hour for hours spent cleaning? Is that in essence what that escalator is?
Yes, correct.
If they know that this increase is going to happen, why don't they already have it covered in their costs?
That's a great question. I can't answer that without talking to the rep from the company that presented this quote.
When I enter into a contract on a prevailing, well, really any contract, whether it be union or prevailing wage or whatever, my contractual language says that I've got to have the escalation costs covered. So I would think that the Village of Montgomery would have that sort of clause in their contract as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. I don't have an answer for that at this current moment, but I can look into that for sure.
It sounds like we not only need clarification from them and tighten that up on this issue, on this contract, but I would say tighten that up and clarify that on future contracts as well for everybody.
Absolutely.
I say they're currently performing the services, so if we don't approve the contract tonight, they'll continue to do that, and then we can bring it back with those answers if you want.
Let's do that. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll go ahead and queue that up for a future meeting. All right. Moving on, we have 5C this evening, the last round of the Montgomery Development Fund Program Small Business COVID-19 Grant Applications. Director Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, tonight we have the last three. One of them is a repeat review, which is number 38, which was SceneCorp. When you first looked at this at one of your previous meetings and the committee had looked at it, there was some confusion over their actual business address. We felt at the time that their business address was in Big Rock, but with proof from their tax returns, it identifies their address as 1892 Windette. So that's a repeat review. The other two are MyJ Concrete Incorporated on Boer Avenue, and then F&C Industries on Pearl Street. This would take your number to 42 reviewed and 40 approved. You might recall that at a previous meeting, we had rejected the applications, or the board had rejected the applications for two not-for-profits. So this is right at the cap in terms of your overall allotment of funds from the Montgomery Development Fund to this program at $200,000. And the committee recommends approval of all three of these applications at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Rich?
No, I move to approve.
Second.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
and Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item 6 under items for discussion. We have the draft 5-year infrastructure road program. I can see Engineer Wallers and Chris Ott have joined us this evening. Who should I kick off to here?
Let me start, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So after the May 8th meeting, once we had the projected revenue that the board wanted to invest in the road program, we went ahead and then programmed the individual streets for each year for the 5-year plan. And so we'd like to go through that this evening. Some of you have met Chris Ott, others of you may not, but he's an engineer in our
the add to Chrome button.
he's an engineer in our office, and is responsible for the modeling with the pavement management software, but also handles the design, leads the design charge for putting the plans and specs together. And he's really the person that's responsible for us getting good bids every year on the project and getting the project out early so that we can get those good bids. So I'm going to ask Chris to share his screen and go through. We have a short PowerPoint. We'll go through the 5-year plan. It was in the individual streets were in your packet, and we've got some additional information we wanted to share with you. So Jeff, I don't know if you have to release him for sharing, screen sharing, but anyway.
Just a quick question, Pete. Are we going to get to talk about pavement condition index again?
We just might.
I look forward to this every year.
Do I have to do something for him to share?
Well, I'm sure we can work it into the presentation.
Somebody else should be able to share.
And then Chris, you'll need to unmute yourself too.
Sounds good. It's not letting me share my screen right now.
All right, hold on, let me see.
Oh, there you go. Now it's working. Everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So as Pete said, we're just here to talk about the proposed 5-year plan and just follow-up discussion from the first meeting in May. Just a couple of things we're going to touch on is going to be the recommended 5-year plan, just a kind of budget analysis of what we're spending in this proposed 5-year as opposed to the previous 5 years. Discussion on a new funding opportunity, Rebuild Illinois bond funds that the state's doing. Discuss the FAU Route Projects that we'll be doing, the next steps for the program, and then just a summary of the presentation. So a couple things just to go over kind of what goes into the plan and how we come up with each street. And what we're doing is, first thing is the rehabilitation method that we're going to use. So there's 17 different strategies that we input into the program, and it analyzes based on the condition of the road, the traffic, and the type of road, whether it's got curb or uncurbed. Analyzes different strategies that the village, rehabilitation strategies the villages can use, and each one of those is inputted with a cost per square yard. And what the program does is it takes the area of the road and multiplies by that, and that's how it determines what the cost of each roadway is. Another thing that goes into it would be, is there any strategic value to advancing or delaying projects? So a couple instances where this came up would be on Civic Center Avenue. We're going to be paving the police parking lot. It's proposed in the CIP for 2022. So we wanted to get those streets adjacent to there in front of the police department paved in the same year to limit the mobilization. Another thing that was taken into consideration was the build out for the Montgomery apartments, which is why you'll see that Goodwin and Reading are proposed in 2023, when hopefully the majority of the construction traffic is down and the majority of the apartments are in. Another thing that gets taken into account is any underground utility projects that might be done, identify any possible grant projects or funding that's available. And then probably the biggest thing is just project location. So trying to group the streets geographically as possible, as much as possible, to limit the amount of time that we're affecting one neighborhood, as well as reducing the amount of mobilization for the contractor, which results in decreased unit prices and makes it more cost effective for the village. Last thing would be just a reminder that every year we'll do our yearly pavement management update, where we'll review the latest information on available funding, review the latest unit prices that we're receiving, and then make any adjustments to the cost as necessary. And then lastly, we'd get board approval before moving forward with the new program, which is typically in June. So this would be, the next one would be June of 2021. The next slide is just a summary that shows the proposed year. miles that we'll be resurfacing, and then the different types of funds that we'll be using. So you'll note that the MFT is every other year, which is what we've been doing in the past. We find that it gives the village some freedom in the non-MFT years to do some more improvements that the state might not see as MFT eligible, and then it allows the MFT fund to accumulate to a greater value, which will allow the village to get better funding by having more money to spend. Next slide is the overall map of the areas that are going to be resurfaced and when. So you'll know, as noted earlier, we're trying to group things as much as possible. So right now, the first year would be to finish the remaining streets in the Fairfields Foxmore area. Also do the streets off Mayfield, and then do the remaining streets that are that were resurfaced in 2016. The second year is focusing around the police station there, and the police station Orchard Prairie North and Lakewood Creek West, as well as improvements on Nell Road and Ashland Avenue. 2023 is primarily out east, so streets in Seasons Ridge and Arbor Ridge, and then, as noted earlier, the streets on Goodwin and Reading, as well as the village submitted a federal grant for resurfacing for Concord, so that's proposed in 2023. 2024 is kind of in the central area of the village there, off Baseline Road and Blackberry Heights, as well as doing an improvement on River Street and some in Montgomery Crossing there. And then lastly would be 2025, which is focused primarily out west in Blackberry Crossing West and Balmorhea. So the next slides are just going through the individual streets, the length, area, and cost. You'll see at the bottom of each slide shows the money that the village will be spending on preventative maintenance, which is going to be crack sealing, reclamite or asphalt rejuvenation, and patching. A couple things to note in 2022. So Nell Road, we're proposing that be a candidate to be used for the Rebuild Illinois bond funds. I will get into kind of what you can use those funds for and what they are a little bit later in the presentation. 2023, you'll see that Concord Drive's highlighted, as noted earlier. That is a project that the village submitted what's called a LAFO grant, or Local Agency Functional Overlay, through the STP Surface Transportation Program for federal funding. It's a 75-25 split up to any questions about the individual streets or the overall plan based on these slides or the map?
Chris, your volume's cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you can do to adjust it.
Okay.
Might need a headset.
All the cool people have them here.
Is there any questions on the proposed streets or the 5-year plan from anybody?
No, I mean, it looks like on the map, when you do Emma Avenue in several years, you're going to be gapping it right in front of Youngerman's house. Is that accurate? We lost him. No, Chris, it's awesome. Thank you.
So just kind of going into the budget analysis. Right now, we're proposing the budget approximately be $2.716 million annually over the next 5 years, and that's going to be spent on both preventative maintenance, milling and resurfacing, and reconstruction. Just to kind of couple more major projects than just milling and resurfacing would be the Baseline Road LAFO, the Concord Drive, and the Nell Road reconstruction, which will use the Rebuild Illinois bond grant. So just kind of a comparison to what 2016 through 2020 was compared to what we're proposing here. So the annual expenditure in 26 for the previous 5 years was $2.984 million. So what we're proposing for the Next 5 years is 2.71 million, so a little bit less. And you'll see, as we discussed at the previous meeting, that the funding and the individual funds, so the IRP, we're trying to set aside about $1 million. So you'll see that we're significantly decreasing the amount of IRP that we're spending to do those set aside. And then it's getting made up for by the increase in MFT funds. And that was partly due to the new gas tax that was passed in July. So the village is receiving additional funds due to that additional gas tax that was implemented by the state. The other new thing from the previous 5 years would be that Rebuild Illinois bond funds. And then in terms of resurfacing, the previous 5 years, the village did 35.4 miles of resurfacing. The new 5-year plan would do 27.63 miles of resurfacing. Next would be the Rebuild Illinois bond funds. So these were general obligation bonds that were authorized by Governor Pritzker and his Rebuild Illinois capital program to provide municipalities and road districts with funds for capital projects. There are some restrictions on what you're able to use these funds for. The project must be a bondable project, which the Department of Transportation means any project that you can prove provides an additional 13 years of structural life. So essentially, it comes down to either doing a construction of a new roadway or reconstruction of an existing roadway. So the village will receive approximately a little over 1.2 million over the next 3 years, and they'll be dispersed twice a year for the next 3 years. The village got their first disbursement in May. I'm not sure when the next one's going to be. I think it's going to be in November or December of this year. Staff and EEI identified 2 projects for this. The first would be the Nell Road reconstruction, which would be from Orchard Road to the east end in front of United Facilities, and then the Dixon Road realignment, which I got a location map for that on the next slide. The Dixon Road realignment would be a project that would be done in conjunction with the county. The county right now is proposing to redo the intersection of Galena Road and Cannonball. We think that would be a prime opportunity to put in the 4th leg there and realign the offset intersection of Cannonball and Dixon Road. So you can see there in green would be the portion that's going to be completed by County. The blue would be the portion completed by the village, as well as the red. And the red is where the old Dixon Road is. That would be removed and restored back to grass. And then the yellow would be a proposed Gordon Road extension at some point to be completed by a developer at the time when they develop that area. So is there any questions on the Rebuild Illinois bond funds or the projects we've identified for those funds?
Yeah, real quick, Chris. That blue dash line that you show there, the Dixon realignment, I mean, will we have enough funds under the Rebuild Illinois to do that? Or
there will not be enough funds in just the Rebuild Illinois. It will have to be supplemented by IRP, which, if you remember at the May meeting, that was one of the projects we identified for the set-aside money. So it would be a combination of bond money and IRP money.
Yeah, and when would we do that project?
We've talked to Fran Klaus, the superintendent of highways for Kendall County. I think he's got it technically programmed for 2023, but he said that if it was 2023 or 2024, that would be fine. We've programmed it, I think, for 2024, Chris. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so we're going to work with Kendall to make sure that fits his time frame, but I think that would fit nicely with what he was thinking as well.
Awesome. Okay.
And one thing to note with the bond funds is they do need to be spent by, I believe, 2025.
Okay.
Would we expect upgraded traffic control with that realignment?
The county's anticipating putting in a signal at that location.
All right. Any other questions?
Just a comment. I appreciate the way that you guys are doing this. I know it took us a long time to be able to get this way and to be able to do these roads and to be able to go out for bid at the right time and do things in the proper chronological order. And I think if the residents really looked at how we were doing this previously, before 7 years ago, as opposed to now, I think that they'd see significant improvements now. So I appreciate the way you guys are bringing this to us and explaining it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, biggest difference is that we actually have funds to do significant roadway improvements. So it's a good situation. So, all right.
And go ahead.
Just anything else?
Nope.
All right.
So this slide identifies some of the FAU routes that we'll be doing projects on. So as noted, we'll be doing, we submitted LAFO grants for Concord and Baseline, but as part of the proposed plan, we will also be doing improvements on Webster Street, Mill Street, and River Street downtown, as well as Main Street in 2021, and then the north portion of River from Mill to Ashland in 2024, and then Gordon Road in 2025. So this map kind of just identifies some of the FAU routes that are in the village and the projects that we'll be doing on those. And then just to kind of summarize, so the overall village road score is going to be maintained at 80 with this proposed plan. As talked about in the May meeting, we discussed trying to maintain a 15-year cycle, which is approximately 5 miles. And if you recall the summary sheet, the village is doing, I think it's 5.5 miles over these next 5 years. So we're hitting that goal. Continue to focus on preventative maintenance to extend pavement life. We're definitely hitting that goal, doing crack sealing and patching each year, as well as the asphalt rejuvenation on the streets that were resurfaced the year prior. Always looking for the most cost-effective improvements on each roadway, and what can be done to stretch the dollars as far as possible, and then always continuing to explore additional revenue sources or grant opportunities that might be out there for the village. So if anything comes up, we'll definitely bring it to the board's attention. And then the next steps would be to provide a draft report and proposed 5-year plan for the board's review at the 6/22 board meeting. Approve the final report and proposed 5-year plan at the first meeting in July, and then present the engineering agreement for the 2021 design at the last board meeting in July, which is consistent with what we've done in the past. And then open bids for construction in February of 2021 in anticipation for construction in April 2021. So, is there any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, just getting back to my agenda here. All right. Anything new or unfinished tonight?
I have a couple. Go ahead, Denny.
I got a quick question. Since all these towns are opening their village halls, and I didn't see in the notes, how long before I know we've had trouble getting it fixed, but how long before we have that glass up so we can open it?
Mark and I spoke today. I think we'll be looking at mid to end of June probably to have it completed, so.
Okay.
As an extension of that question, when can we start having village board meetings at Village Hall again?
I mean, I guess I would look to mirror that. I mean, right now we're limited to 10 or fewer people for gatherings, and we certainly exceed that, so.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend a lot on what the state does and whether or not they change their guidance. But as right now, in phase 3, we're limited to the 10 or more, which makes it difficult for a public meeting. Even if you were to limit your board members, you still have to provide an opportunity to the public. So even if we had less than 10 in Village Hall, we need to make sure that the public can still have meaningful participation. So, there's certainly things we can look through, alternative options available, but I think the simplest thing is probably to continue in our current state until we're at least allowed to expand to 50.
And that's phase 4. So the first meeting in July, in essence, we could be back regular in person for these.
So it may be one more meeting then?
Might be.
Okay. My next question, as long as we're talking about roadways, when are the the intersection improvements coming for Route 30 in Orchard?
Steve, I'm going to have to get back to you. I have to look up that answer. I can't recall. I know it was awarded a CMAQ grant. I know they've been working on design. I just don't know where they're at in their schedule, so I'll have to report back to you.
Okay, and that's fine. My next question.
Hey, real quick, Steve.
Yeah.
I can just see here on my screen that as of February 24th, Pete Waller's reported that they plan to construct in 21.
Okay, and that's fine. I just, every once in a while, every 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, I want to ask about it. I was talking with Jeff earlier today, and I fully anticipate that the overall widening of Orchard Road, or Route 30 from 31 to 47, is probably going to get pushed even more because of the pandemic and what's going on with sales tax and taxes and pandemic. So
It's not in IDOT's 5-year plan or anything, so, right?
I really don't think it's in IDOT's 50-year plan, quite honestly. My next question, more of a comment for Director Wolf. Some residents had reached out to me about the height of the trees along the sidewalk, that they were pretty low, and it seems to be right now the lindens seem to be hanging pretty low. Check with Ed. Now's not really the time to prune, but when the branches are like 4.5 feet, we may have to prune them anyway.
Yeah, do you have any specific locations that you could share with me maybe afterwards, Steve?
I'm trying to get that information, but as I drove around, it quite literally seemed to be the linden species of tree that they kind of grow pointed down anyway, and that's just their growth habit. I think residents are having issues with those.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely look into it.
I'm done, Teresa.
Thanks. Do we have anything on our calendar regarding an electronics recycling or shredding?
So the electronic recycling, if you recall, Trustee Sperling, we laid out a new, DC Trash laid out a new program that they'll be implementing with the curbside or home collection system. So they are rolling that out. We're putting information up on our website here shortly. They're a little bit behind with their progress on that due to the COVID pandemic. They were forced to lay off several of their drivers, so in order to keep things afloat. And then on top of that, with the rioting mostly in the city of Chicago, they've had a lot of dumpster fires that they've had to attend to. So I did get a message from our rep, Katie Neary, last week saying that she apologized. They're a little bit behind given the circumstances, but we're hoping to get that information up here shortly. And again, we think that this new program will be much more convenient for people not having to load these items into their vehicles and have a set time and date when they have to be delivered and dropped off to Public Works. So I'll keep you up to date on that when I have more information from her.
Does that go for household cleaners as well?
Yes.
I had a resident ask me about that.
Yes.
Good question, Teresa.
Thanks. Mark, so then what about shredding? That would be something we would have to hold separately. Do we anticipate doing any of that this year?
The shredding events are something that were just an additional thing that we brought to the electronic recycling that was not part of the contract with DC. That is a separate item, but yeah, that's definitely something that we can look to set those events up, probably similar to our recycling events where we'll have to hold those in a location. I'm doubting they're going to do drive-by recycling, but we can look at those dates and definitely come up with them. I know there's always a need, it seems like, for the shredding. Our biggest issue that we find is that the companies they book up pretty fast for weekend shredding events. So we'll definitely look at those and see what we can do.
Okay, yeah, I've been getting questions on both of those. That's why I wanted to clarify.
Just to follow up on the shredding.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted to follow up on the shredding.
Sure, go ahead.
Would we consider relocating now that we're not tied to the recycling event, the electronics recycling? Go back out to the PD, so it's more visible?
I mean, it's definitely an option. The only problem that we have at the PD is the traffic volumes that are incurred from Stewart Sports Complex. I'm sure the chief can attest to it's a very busy intersection, or very busy corridor, I should say, during the summer when soccer and baseball are in full effect. I do know that it's a little bit more visible, but at the same time, I almost feel like we've kind of established a good system here at Public Works. But it's certainly something that we can definitely talk about and come up with a resolution.
I don't even think we need to be on a weekend necessarily now. I mean, why wouldn't a weekday work?
Because some of us work.
He's laughing.
Good answer, Doug.
I work on the weekends too. I work all the time, Doug. I don't have a cushy job.
I do.
My next question.
Thank you.
Director Wallers, if you can put on your board of the library board hat for a moment. Has our Montgomery campus officially opened yet? Can we go inside?
We have drive-up services right now, and I'll have to get you the full opening schedule. I don't have it right here. So I'm going to have to get back to you with all that information, but I know that we've got drive-up services.
Now, right? We can start dropping books back?
Yeah, you definitely can drop books off, for sure. Yep.
It's drive-ups are at least the 1st of July.
I'm sorry, Tom. Drive up what?
It's drive up, pick up, drop off through at least July 1st is what's been publicly communicated from the library.
Thanks.
District.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Pete.
I have another item, if I may. I want to say thank you to the Montgomery Police Department and Chief Smith for doing a tremendous job, and the officers doing a tremendous job over the protests, riots, and looting that have occurred in our area over the last couple weeks. Thank you, Chief, and thank you. Make sure the officers know that we appreciate what they do for us.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Future meetings, you can see there. Committee of the Whole next week is canceled. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, June 22nd at 7 p.m. No executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead, Penny.
All right, Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
and Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
thank you all for coming. We're adjourned. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.